Real Estate Mobile Tower right here in sunny Northport, Florida. This is John Rawlings with Commissioner Pete Emrich. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good. So we've got a lot happening in Northport, don't we?
Sorry, you better have
just showed up. Well,
absolutely.
Yeah. So what are some hot topics that we have going on in Northport right now? What are some buzzwords out there that you hear?
First off, I'd like to it's been like a couple years since we've had a joint meeting with Sarasota County.
Okay.
And between the commissions, and those are always good to have because we can try and get on the same page, let them know what our needs are. They can let us know what their needs are. How can we come together and meet those needs? And we have a meeting this Thursday. It's at the R.L. Anderson complex in Venice. And what they're bringing to the table for discussions are the county actions on affordable housing, what they're putting together and giving us an update on that, their mobility system update, and mosquito management. So we'll be discussing all those from their side with presentations. And mosquito management down here has been a hot topic for many, many years. Right. And hopefully we can get some resolutions to where we can get, a little bit more.
Are we lacking in coverage?
Yeah. And there's different types of coverages and it comes down to manpower. We did offer to put our own sprayers out there under them, and they said no, let them rework the system. So this is a update on how we are going to benefit down here from that, because there's different types of spraying options. You can go and put larvicide in the ditches prior to them hatching, or you can do like the plain spraying that's overhead while they're out and infestating the areas, which that's the most lethal and toxic type stuff. So we're trying to come to a happy medium and just see what we can work out between the two, districts.
How important is it to have a good working relationship with the county?
It's very important. I mean, it goes back to history. If you got Northport, we were always considered the redheaded stepchild because.
Do you still think we're there?
No, I think we're blooming past that.
Okay.
I think we're gonna be the county's big brother before long, and
I can see that number doing that.
And also, we do have needs that need to be addressed. Our tax dollars do go up to the county for disbursement, and not just the certain people that they want to help need to be helped. Everybody needs to be helped as a whole, and we're willing to work to get that working.
And so you've been in office now, what, 4 years, 5 years?
A little over 4 years.
Yeah. So where would you say that we've enhanced that relationship over that time span?
I think, but just by having dialogue, COVID really screwed us. And then with the hurricane, and it's very hard to get our schedules together. So that's why this time it's taken so long. Can't give any reasonings on why it happened before, but I did attend one of their sessions and everybody was fine. Everybody had good conversations, and I think everybody walked away refreshed. Again, that was like 2.5 years ago.
So, you brought up COVID. We also had the hurricane. How was the working relationship with the county during the hurricane side of things?
They helped out everywhere they could.
Okay.
Our emergency management team, they worked very hand in hand with everybody. When there was a need, it was addressed, even if it was North County, South County, wherever the need was, it was met. And, again, it comes down to what resources do you have? So if you don't have enough, they've got to be spread out. If you have too much, then you go ahead and help the other areas too. So I think in all, we wouldn't be in the shape that we are now without having dual jurisdictions helping us out.
Without because I don't want to throw anybody under the bus, and I don't want to throw it out there before you get a chance to work it. But what are some of the things that we should be working with the county on that you think that are the current kind of situation?
Well, we're looking at population growth down here. We're looking at roads, infrastructure, stuff like that, which is mostly city based, but it can be county based as well.
Right.
So,
and sometimes state.
Yes. And state. And we've gotten some approvals from state along the way for infrastructure. And it's just by, working together and making those connections to where, it does benefit the taxpayer.
The need to have that relationship is awesome. We already talked about that. The direction that the conversations go. Do you think? I know it's been a while, but do you think that the receptiveness of those conversations is really ready to go with the county?
I think so, because, over the years, we've got different board members on both boards. So you're actually meeting this board for the first time. There may be some stragglers from before,
Right.
but it's still a new board, with
Ever working, isn't it?
with new personalities. So you go up there, you have your discussions, and you see where you go. Now, what we're bringing to the table for our discussions is the growth patterns in Northport. We're giving an update on the aquatic center and the southern interchange that we've been working on with the Yorkshire and Ringtree intersection.
And that's a big deal.
Yeah. And while we're in discussions with Charlotte County, because they're also affected by it if it happens to go down near Veterans and Kings Highway. But that all deals with DOT, and that's all part of, I'm sit on the MPO board, and we have those discussions up there. It's 20 years out at least from it coming to fruition, because you're talking hundreds of millions of dollars.
Well, we talked about River Road for about 20 years too, didn't we? So that it stands to reason. We've got some interchanges with lighting that are going to change quicker than that with Sumter and Price, right?
Yeah, and we're still working on that. We're trying to get DOT funding to do that. It's been stalled a little bit, but they are looking at it even more. If it comes down to Northport having to do it themselves, you're talking multi-million dollars to do that. Is that our priority? Of course, lives are always a priority,
right?
But we also they want a light in front of the high school. So do we take all of this money to put in lights, or is there other ways that we can possibly delineate the accidents out there by maybe manpower or something like that? There's a lot of discussions yet to be had on those. And should Northport bear the whole burden of that on the taxpayers?
Well, and so we're talking Toledo Blade. Let's just talk Toledo Blade. Is that county or is that?
That's DOT where they get on and get off.
Right. So
same with Sumter.
Same with Sumter.
State property.
But the difference is now add in the light at the high school. That's different.
That's school board.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's still not City of Northport's responsibility. And we've gone to the school board and said, hey, would you go 50-50 with us on it? We even put, I think, $700,000 in a budget for that light. It was supposed to be 1.5 million. And their reply to us was, we support this, but we have no financial means to help you. So if you want to do this, go ahead.
Right.
And then there's two different avenues now with the widening of Price. There's two different ways you can put that light in. You put it in the proper way for all of the widening, which costs twice as much because you have to have the arm that goes across even longer, or you can set up a mid-shift one. But then that'll be torn down in the widening.
Would you ever
why would you waste that money?
Why would you ever think that a roundabout would fit there?
No.
Why?
I don't like roundabouts.
I'm not a fan of them.
I just don't like them.
They're popping up everywhere.
Yeah, and not by my means are they? And I just think they say they work. I think if Jersey had them up there, and every time we went on vacation up there, I'd pull over at the line and go, "You're driving, hon. I ain't driving through Jersey." I wouldn't, because it was so stupid up there. You had to make a right to make a left.
Right.
And once you get in there, people don't know where they're going and may overreact, and then you may not have the head-on collisions, but I think in my opinion, you would have more fender benders going on in there.
Well, you've got a lot of conversation they need to be had.
Oh, absolutely.
And we're just at the beginning stages of these conversations, correct?
Sure, absolutely. They want to put a roundabout in there at Cranberry and 41 with that whoop-de-doo with the racetrack and stuff, and that's an agreement between us and Charlotte County. We're equally funding it because we both have that responsibility. Anything I call it, well, it'd be west of Hillsborough with Charlotte County. Anything east is Northport.
Right.
So that does affect all of us, even though 41's DOT.
Right.
So it's prior to 41.
Is the cutoff line truly the middle of the road on Hillsborough?
Yeah, pretty
so
much.
It's one side gets paved, the other one.
Yeah, well, it's always a joint. Yeah. I mean, you'll see us go down through and fill the potholes, and then maybe 6 months later they'll do theirs because they're complaining to Northport you didn't do the other side.
Right.
But what's funny is when you go to the racetrack there, that actual building is half on Charlotte County and half in Northport. Like the first 3 pumps are all Charlotte County. And the other,
and that's a dividing way on the taxes too, right?
Yeah, because the line sort of squiggled through there.
Right. So I actually make fun of that with a lot of the people that I take out showing houses and different things like that. I'm like, that's the half of those pumps go Charlotte County, half of them go the other direction, and that's true.
And it's funny, you go to Cornelius across 41, and that's all Charlotte County, and where the new Wawa is, even though it's north of that racetrack, that's all Charlotte County.
Right.
And then we get down a little further, and then Chancellor splits half between Northport and Charlotte County.
Right. So there's a lot of confusion that happens in there.
Yes.
And the dialogue that has to happen is well in advance. We're talking 20 years at least for Yorkshire, but everybody's on the same page. It needs to happen.
Yeah, and it's supposed to be, according to their specs, it's supposed to be like a super interchange type thing. I don't really have the details on what that means, but you can get on and off at both areas or whatever the case may be. So
good.
This way
it needs to happen like that anyway.
Yeah, it's supposed to cut down a lot of congestion. Now, will that affect Sarasota areas that are always congested? I don't think so. I think it's just going to help the congestion at Kings Highway, Punta Gorda, because you're going to have an extra exit to get off.
And it's needed. We're definitely there. And there's still a whole lot of land there that will be developed probably prior to that exit going in.
Right. And I don't know where it was. It might have been on your show. Somebody had talked about where that road that needs to go through all the way to 70 should go in, but it's going through a lot of preserved property, and they feel that the preserved property is going to be damaged due to that road going through. But that would alleviate a lot of traffic as well.
100%. And that still is, even though it's a quiet conversation, it still is a conversation.
Oh, it is. It's still an active conversation.
Right. Yeah. And they're not putting it to bed.
No, they're still talking about it. It may be in the drawer for now, but
so we've had some really amazing conversations. We had a show a couple of weeks ago with 5 guests on.
I saw it,
and we talked about Warm River Springs and how things were going there. As a loan commissioner, y'all are individuals.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on Warm River Springs and where you see it going?
I've been involved with this discussion since 2014, and I have really never wavered from my decision. Back in that day, Sarasota County and Northport bought it together as a development plan. That's what they wanted to do. There was a meeting held up at the R.L. Anderson place. And what that meeting was to introduce an ITN. What they wanted to do was have an intent to negotiate with possible developers, or what the case may be, on what their looks would have been for the Springs. And that got shut down by the Northport's commission, big time. And the North and County said, well, okay, we've had enough. In hindsight and sitting there, I was very disappointed in Northport's decision at that point, because they didn't take the time to at least sit down and listen. They could have said no afterwards, but let's listen.
Right.
But they didn't. So that's okay. But we're in the state where we are now, where they made it into a park, and they made the burden on the taxpayer. Okay. But everybody's out there saying that Warm River Springs has made money. In the past, it made lots of money when it was privately owned, I believe up to $1 million a year. Lately, it has not. And we have not had the money to put back into the infrastructure or fix the buildings. They were patched. They were just basically just glued together to hold them in place. So It made about $2 million in 8 years. Yeah, it made $1 million last year, but up until that point, it wasn't much. We were getting about, 20 grand, 200 grand a year. But going forward, we dumped $7 million worth of surtax money into that fund
Right.
to go ahead and let's rehab the buildings to the old Art Deco ways, this, that, and the other. I didn't vote for that. I didn't want any taxpayer money to go into that. When they made it a park and they decided on that board, it's going to be pay as you go. Well, that's the money you've got to fund the springs.
Right.
Pay as you go. So you got $2 million. If it goes forward and let's say we don't go through the P3, I'd be the first one to say, get that $7 million out of there. Let's put it to use on something else. Whatever we can, if we can work on some weirs so we can prevent flooding, if we can put it towards Price Boulevard to cut that cost down, whatever we can do other than the springs, because we got to remember that commission pay as you go. So let's take that taxpayer's money, put it back and put it to use for the taxpayer, because all we're doing is supplementing unincorporated Sarasota County. That's all we're doing up there.
Stay right there for a second. So, and people need to understand what you're talking about when you say we're funding unincorporated Sarasota County. Explain that.
Go down Ortiz Boulevard.
Mm-hmm.
Look at all of the buildings. See if they have an attached dwelling. See if they are duplexes, whatever. It's been known for years that they rent out their space. They're supplementing their income for the tourists that come down here. Northport getting any of that tax money?
No.
Does Sarasota? I don't know if they're filing taxes or not. And I'm not going to say that they don't. And I'm not going to say that they are, because I don't know.
Right.
But it supplements their income because they're there and they're a walk away from the park. So we are supplementing their lifestyle by that.
Mm-hmm.
And Northport gets nothing from it.
So I'm gonna step away real quick, because I've had this conversation with others, and I'm one that I like a budget to be a true budget for business wise.
Mm-hmm.
So city budget is not really business budget, but are all the fees that we pay are like landscaping, and that comes out of a different fund too.
It does.
It doesn't, that $2 million of income, it's not a true representation.
It's money. It's probably net proceeds that came in, and a lot of the costs were not put into that because
Correct.
It's a regular day-to-day, like landscaping. You said, well, we're part of Parks and Rec. This is our landscaping budget. We go out and we mow all of the parks. Okay, if we did Warm Mineral Springs every time a month, that you would have done it 12 times a year, you can figure out those numbers on what it costs for labor.
Well, the reason I bring that up is that perspective is everything. And we have a lot of people running around all over town saying it makes money. Okay, but yes, through your eyes, it makes money. Through paperwork, it does make money, but it's not making the same number that everybody's spewing out there to make it sound better than it is. I'm not saying get rid of the park. I'm not saying shut it down. What I'm saying is, if we're going to have dialogue about taxpayers paying for this, we actually should have true number generation.
Sure.
And really talk brass tacks. I love the conversation that we had the other day, because everybody on every side of this conversation is very passionate.
Of course.
But spewing of the wrong number is not an accurate way to go about it. I would love for us to come up with the true number. If we made 1.2 million, I'm good with that. But don't tell me it's 2 million if it's not 2 million.
Right.
And that number is not accurate.
But look at our initial investment of $5.5 million.
And I say that too.
And I'm not harping on that, because we invested $5.5 million.
Correct.
That's fine. That's
Correct.
Money that was spent. I believe it came out of surtax, and that was the penny sales tax. So everybody paid for that.
Yep.
So that I'm not too worried about. So let's go with, okay, that was our investment. Now, where do we go from here?
Right.
Okay. What benefits the taxpayers of Northport to keep it as a park and keep putting money into it, the way it is? Because You got let's just go back to my scenario. You got $2 million.
Yep.
What's that going to pay for those buildings and everything to be redone? First off, it's not enough money to put water and sewer out there.
Not at all.
So scratch that off the list. So would it be better? And this is what kills me. It's like a lot of people go out there, and I know they use it for medicinal uses, and they truly believe that it's helping them. And I'm sure the minerals, once it saturates into the skin, it helps the joints, and I'm sure they're getting relief. I don't doubt that. But when they use the word sacred, this is sacred ground, this is this, that, and the other. Well, if it's sacred ground, then why are we allowing people to trample all over it?
Right.
Let's go ahead and put up a wall, shut it down, keep it sacred, let nature take over. And then you won't worry about destroying the springs at all because nobody will visit it. Why did Miami State or Miami University do the same with Little Salt Springs? You can't go in there.
Right.
They were looking, they were trying to learn from it. They say this is a burial ground. How many people go swimming in the cemetery? Let's, make it what it is.
Right.
And then if that's the case, let's honor that. And then nobody goes in it. Right. And it's preserved. And then you don't have to worry about Save Our Springs because nobody's going to destroy it. Only the Almighty himself, because nature will take its course.
Well, and there's a couple things to look at there too. And I get what you're saying.
I know I made no friends there, but that's okay.
And now sometimes you don't make friends. You just speak truth. So let's talk about the springs as a whole, because the springs as a whole has a huge problem being built around it, whether it's commercial through a P3, or whether it is independent house growth that's happening around it anyway. All the septic tanks, all the wells that are being drilled. There,
you don't think that's not affecting that aquifer system?
100%.
Yeah,
100%. And so the same. It's educating people on what's happening, whether you slow the P3 down or not. All right. First off, the P3, if the P3 goes in, it's not septic and it's not well. It's water. It's sewer.
Yeah.
It changes that whole infrastructure. And nothing that happens at that spring is going to be put in a volatile state of mind because it's being built because of the spring.
Right. The only thing they're worried about is the plating that's underneath,
100%.
Can it handle the burden of, let's say, a 3-story hotel, 4-story hotel? Can it handle that burden?
Right.
Well, first off, they'll take all and do all the testing, and they won't build that thing, because why would they invest $50 million into something that's going to sink?
Well, the other side of that is a P3 that comes in here, they're just not going to start building. There's so many things they have to go in.
Absolutely.
And they have to survey the land. They have to survey under the land. They have to look at so many layers that's happening there to make sure that they preserve the reason they're building. And the reason that they're building in that location really has to do with the Warm Well Springs itself.
And in that process of the P3, we haven't even got to the point where we're negotiating what we want there or what we don't want there. They have given us a grandioso plan on, we're ready to do this if you let us.
Right.
We haven't sat down and talked brass taxes. I, for one, have already made it said that I do not want the $9 million to go over to them. It's pay as you go. Remember, they got $2 million in the kitty.
Right.
That $7 million comes back to the city in my eyes, but it's a board decision. So
you're 1 vote out of 5.
I'm 1 vote out of 5, but I would love to take that $7 million back and put it to work like it should have been done before. But we had different members on the board that saw it differently. So that's fine. That was a decision that was made. I voted against it. I have a clean conscience on that.
And I'm going to bring this up. We're beating this horse as we ride it, because legitimately there's nothing solid here.
No, not yet.
Nothing. And yeah, I listened to what you said when it came to the county. We've got to listen. We've got to listen. People have made up their mind before it's even there, before it's even evaluated. They've already made up their mind what they want to keep. And it's funny. I brought this up just prior to us talking. people are upset about the trees being cut down over on Sumter by Walmart.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, people, I'm going to tell you right now, trees are going to be torn down. Movement is happening in this town. It's moving forward. If you want to stop these companies from coming in and taking the trees out, get your wallet out and buy it. You are a citizen of a pre-plotted city. It's already designed. It's already going to happen. I don't care what your attitude is. Understand, if you don't own it, it's going to be a hard thing to stop somebody from coming in, clearing lots, and building a house, building a or a commercial piece. It's difficult.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing about it is you got property rights. So if you've come in and you've already went through all your permit process and you're going to put in a development, there's building designs and specifications that you have to hold up to. And then it's up to the developer to make those requirements happen. So let's say it says you got to have 30% of green space. Doesn't mean it has to be existing. It says green space. It means I can knock everything down and then bring their own in. Just like if you were building your own home and you don't want 14 pine trees on your yard, but you would rather have something else, that's your right. We used to have a code years ago where you had to have 4 different trees or 5 different trees on your lot, and they changed it.
Right.
Because what they were doing is they put the 4 in, they'd build the next house, take those 4 and move it over to the next house for their closing. And that happened in the old development back in the 70s and the 80s. So it's property rights. So when development comes, they have their choice on what they're doing. You can sit there and mitigate and say, no, you have to leave this tree. You have to do this. You have to do that. And the bottom line is, no, they don't.
Yeah, they're going to clear it.
Yeah,
they're going to clear it. They're going to build. And you know, if we didn't learn anything through the hurricane, we definitely have learned it through the fire that we had over here. Is that, you know, pine trees they're beautiful. You know, they're great. They're great where they're at, and they're not part of traditional landscape here,
right?
Traditionally, they're not part of. I want to save this tree. The oaks are. I save the trees. I get it. Save the trees. And I heard somebody say, we're not a tree city anymore. We just keep losing our trees. We have enough trees that we're at 30%. I say this to people all the time. If you take the county parks that are within the city limits, we have 30% trees, but we don't even count those trees.
Right.
And that's, I find that to be just absolutely asinine, to think that the trees are within the city limits, but because the county owns the trees at that park that we can't touch, that no one can touch, no one will ever touch, those trees that are within our city limits don't count towards our 30%.
Right. And in my prior property, I had a few pine trees. They were the Austrian pines that go way the hell up there, and they'll have 2 tops on them. And I enjoyed them until they came down.
Right. Yeah. And what happened when they came down?
They almost hit my car and they almost hit my house. But that's on the owner if they want to have them or not. You know, some people, they think Florida is beach city USA. They just want palm trees in their yard.
Correct.
And they're not even
a tree.
They're not even a tree. They're
a grass.
So, I mean, you've heard that story over and over again, but that's what they choose. They've lived up north in the snow for 20, 30 plus years. They want their little piece of paradise. They're going to build their little tiki hut and have their palm trees, maybe a banana tree. You know, still doesn't do the tree canopy any good, but that's what they want.
And I'm not saying we shouldn't try to appreciate the tree canopy. I'm not trying to say that at all. The funny thing is everybody wants things here. They all do. There's people out there that want certain things here and they don't want any more. And those people are going to find out they're going to have a very disappointed life because whatever's going to come here is going to come.
One thing I got to give kudos to is when Welland Park was doing, you know, a lot of their developing up there, they moved a tree, great big old heritage oak, cost them like $1 million just to move this tree down by where they were going to set up their their downtown. They didn't have to do that, but they did.
They saw the value.
Absolutely.
And you know, we're talking about all these things. I want to pop back over to Warm Springs because all these things that we're talking about in the growth category, is there anybody on commission right now that just wants to close it down because it is 100% in bad shape? It's 100% in bad shape. We don't have a building open over there, do we?
We've got the temporary buildings.
That's not what I'm asking.
We do not, of the original structures that are there, none of them are inhabitable, nor will they be inhabitable. They would have to come down and be rebuilt. And more or less, if you go with the old architecture structure that everybody wanted to do, you're looking at $20+ million now.
Right.
So
and that's right now today. And if we don't have a P3, that comes in and helps, how can we logically do that without raising taxes? How can we?
We can't. And here's the deal too. And a lot of the people that go there, they say, well, we don't need all this fancy smancy stuff.
Sure.
Which I understand. So we could put up some aluminum or metal buildings type structures to where you can get in and get out. You have to have permanent bathrooms there. So are they going to be on a septic system, or do we have to run the sewer and water out there? And again, you're at $3 million. We've only got 2. So you're at $3.5 million just for the water and sewer, then the buildings. So where are we going to get that money? And it's going to be on the taxpayer. It's going to be somewhere, somehow, either taking it from surtax funds, hiking up their millage rate. And again,
so
what's the benefit to the Northport taxpayer?
Yeah,
there's no return on investment. We've got $5.5 million. Now we're putting more and more money into it. When will that stop? Or do we just say, okay, it's a park and they can bring up all they want on the aquatic center, and we're adjusting that because we've only finally had one good year to where we can calculate costs and fees and stuff like that. And we were down to about $200 to $300 in losses during the past few years.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden it spiked up to where, okay, now it may be costing us $500,000 a year to operate that facility. We just had fee studies. Guess what we did? We hiked up the fees for admission, especially to non-residential. There was 3 different options. We basically all went with option 1 with a little bit of, hey, look at raising the yearly passes. Look at this. So they're bringing back more information. So we have the time to be able to look at that.
Who are, and I'm going to ask you this, and we've gone over this over and over and over again, but do we know who and what parts of our city utilize that Warm Well Spring Park? Because it's a park that you have to pay to go into to use.
Yeah.
Clearly. Okay. And everybody says, well, everybody uses it. No, we don't all use it. The taxpayers in this town, I'll bet that if you took our population, 82,000 plus, a quarter of our population doesn't use it. I think over 3/4 of the population doesn't even know it exists and has never seen it.
The numbers that they say that like 90% are outside of Sarasota County, I don't agree with, because unincorporated Sarasota County is still Sarasota County, and they utilize it daily.
They do. If you sliced our pie.
So that number, in my opinion, is skewed. So I think that
I agree.
I think that you're right on maybe. I don't know very many people in Northport. I know a lot of people up in Welland Park. They say they don't even know what it is.
Right.
But even in Northport, I think they're busy doing their day-to-day living and lives to where it may not affect them. So I would say 15% of city of Northport population may utilize it. And that's a high number, I'm guessing.
If we put this to a vote, if we put a referendum together that said, hey, we're gonna raise your taxes this amount to cover the $20 million we have to do Warm Well Springs, and you've been through this, you understand that I'm asking you this question because every single time that we talk about a tax rate increase, this town gets fired up.
Sure.
So if you think we're going to spend money on that park through tax money and not have taxpayers rallying around that, saying, wait a minute, no one goes there. It's a lot of county people that have that slice of pie in that unincorporated Sarasota County area that utilize that
right,
and
their visitors
and
from
their visitors,
Europe, and
yep.
you know,
and so if you roll that into your conversation, I mean, this is by no means is this conversation about let's shut it down. But the funny thing is everybody who wants something from that park.
Right. And the only reason I said shut it down, use the word sacred.
Right. And if you do that.
Right. And then if you call it that, then treat it as such. If it is sacred because of, you know,
I wish they'd take
the Native Americans and stuff like that. That's fine.
I wish they would in my vocabulary, I think they should stop using that word if they want to keep it a swimming hole.
Correct.
Because you don't swim on sacred ground. You don't.
No.
You honor it and you appreciate it, but truthfully, this is not sacred ground to the standard that all of us have been taught what was sacred ground. That if it was, it would never been publicly owned. It would have never been a swimming hole. They would have never removed all the artifacts the way they did and done all the things that they did to the actual War Memorial Springs itself. It would have been handled completely different. And you bring up Little Salt Springs.
Right. Look at how that's being handled.
Nobody gets in, nobody does anything, and it's a park. It isn't even a park.
And a lot of the people out there were saying, well, let's get the state involved. Let's get them. Let's have them make it a state park. The state don't want it. They never did.
No.
They had them talks way before 2014. They said, we have no interest in it.
And truthfully, I've had guests on the show that have had the conversation that we should just take care of War Memorial Springs and let the rest of it be natural. Don't do anything out there. Okay. Well, we're keeping green space. Okay. So does that count towards our trees?
It would. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then let people tear down their trees then. And let's move on with, if we're going to keep that, I agree with you. If you want to keep it and you don't, I'm tired. I'm worn out from the group that says we want to leave it alone. We don't want to do anything with it. We want it to be a park, and we want to find grants to pay for it. Okay. I promise you, and I'm going to ask you this. And I even said, I promised them, haven't we been looking for all those resources this whole time?
Absolutely.
And we got great staff. We got great writers. There isn't any money. I mean, reality is, if we had a chance to get that money, we would have already written for it.
And, you know, the big issue is they're talking about the designation on the springs and stuff like that. It's, if you look at the big picture and if you had all of the information, not only would it affect that spring, Little Salt Springs, but it would have affected thousands of springs within all of our neighboring counties too. So there's a lot more to that map than what the people that know everything really don't. So it's funny when you think you have the information and you call it as fact, but then you really don't.
If we really don't start looking at public water, public sewer in that area, if the housing develops it, it's a park, leave it a park. Fine, leave it a park. All the housing going in around it, tapping into well water. It's going to be not too long in the distant future if we don't get city water and city sewer running in those areas. And it may never be what it is. Or, you know, I'm wondering, do we do tests on it?
Yeah.
Is the content the same as it was in 1970?
I doubt it. No, because they've done a lot of cleaning. They've added chemicals. They got the stink out of there. They add sand. They did a lot of stuff to the innards of War Mill Springs throughout the years, not just the city, but private owners.
And so it's not what it was in 1970.
I moved here in 78, and you could drive down 41 and smell the springs from 41. You can barely smell them when you're right up next to it now.
Right.
So, it was very sulfur induced at that point. So a lot of those chemicals have gone away.
Right. So I bring that, I bring it up because we're fighting for something that mankind, truthfully, has already changed.
Absolutely, they have.
And they've already kind of not destroyed it. It's still their value, but they're just because you build a church and it stands there forever doesn't mean it's the same church 50 years from today. Because I've seen a lot of churches come and go, and the buildings are still there.
And the beliefs may change
throughout
the years.
That's right. So it's ironic that we're not that I don't like the battle. I don't like the battle. I hate the battle but then you have to sit back and you have to look at it logically, and you have to say, okay, but it's been in private ownership's hand all this time, and they did nothing wrong with it. No, they did everything wrong with it. That's why those buildings look like they did when we bought it.
Right.
Is because they didn't take care of them that whole time that they were doing it.
I did tours of that building. You'd go into one closet and there wasn't even a roof over it.
Right.
And the rain would come in,
right.
And they were bad. But talking about the water and sewer out there, and if the sewer would have gone in the water, they would have done a looping project. It would have gone from like Triunfo area all the way to War Mill Springs, all the way down Ortiz, and then loop back to where Caddy Carts is, to create to where you don't you don't have to flush out the hydrants and everything like that. So what that would have entitled the individuals along Ortiz was they could have hooked up if they so choose, to go ahead and do that at a cost, of course.
Sure.
But years ago, we asked that area, do you want to be, annexed into the city? Nope. We don't. We like it where we're at. Now they're saying, well, yeah, we would like to get annexed into the city. And so they can have the water and sewer and everything out there, but that's not on the top of our list right now. Eventually it may get annexed in all the way up to River Road and past on that side, and that's future plans.
Do you feel like Ortiz like we're going to run water down Ortiz? Is that something that you guys have all kind of said, listen, we got to get this done?
No. Because that was part of our plan with the buildings, water, sewer, buildings, phase 1, $3.5 million.
And the buildings aren't truly there, really,
right?
Because they need to be torn down.
But then with the P3, they said, well, we'll pay for this, we'll pay for that, we'll pay for this. So in that project, everything can get done, and then it can be stable. And again, we're not into where, like I said, the 4-story hotel, all those condos. That is just a premonition of what the developer would like to do. But we haven't even discussed saying, okay, well, no, we don't like the size of that. We don't like this. We may not even like where they want to put it. We haven't had those discussions. We're still getting to that point.
And I'm going to ask,
but everybody out there says it's a done deal,
right?
But it's not.
It's not. You don't even know. You don't know what you don't know. First off, we go back to history, and the history of not listening did not help us.
No.
Okay. It shut down county communication.
Yeah.
All right. So we didn't listen the last time, and I truthfully think it hurt us, just like you. If we don't listen, at least listen and engage this time. Where are we going to get the money to fix all this stuff that people want to keep?
Taxpayers.
And who's going to make that announcement? How much are our taxes going to go up to cover the park? Depends. That most of the city doesn't even know exists.
Right.
Because I think you're probably at 95% drive away to go to work every day. 80% of those don't even know Warm Mill Springs is something we're talking about that will affect their tax dollar rate.
But there's a sign on 75 that says Warm Mill Springs this way, so they got to at least see the sign.
Yeah. Okay. So we should put a sign out there that says Warm Mill Springs is going to cost you this amount of money if we don't find a way to pay for it. And that the folks out there that are listening that were on my show, I'm not saying don't do it. Why don't you get busy and start finding solutions? I the funny thing is to say, well, we'll find a different solution. Okay, what is it? If it's not a P3 and you can't find the grants, what's your solution? And we're not looking for the grants. As a city, we're trying. I think we do a phenomenal job.
We look for every grant possible that fits in our wheelhouses for all of them: roads,
everything,
bridges, water, sewer, lift stations,
and we do a great job with that. And it would be different if I was sitting here saying we don't do a good job of. We need to fix that. But we do a good job at it.
And we've hired more people to do that department.
Well, yes. they kind of pay for themselves.
Oh, absolutely. 10 times over.
Yeah. So it's not that the energy and the effort is not there. And I know if every commission could vote on saving the buildings because we found a $20 million allotment, nobody would say no.
Right.
Okay.
They may not be back to Art Deco style, but we may look at that 20 million to try to get everything done. With minimalistic buildings up to code.
But is that a pipe dream because we can't find it? And now we have at least got to engage with the P3 to even see if it's doable. We don't even know it's feasible for the P3 to come on board.
They got to have a return on investment. If they're going to invest $100 million, they have to have a way to recoup that.
You know that, and I'm going to.
And it could be more, it could be less.
I'm going to say this because the common sense side of things isn't to destroy. The common sense, the good that we're talking about is it 100% what a P3 would be embracing too. Because you don't try to spend money on Warm Mill Springs and fix it all up because you're building buildings that tear it all down. That's the Warm Mill Springs part of it. It's the anchor of why the P3
part of it.
It is the most important part because the P3 wouldn't even exist in that area if it wasn't for Warm Mill Springs.
They're banking on that on part of their return on investment.
Sure.
Because they can market it, they can do this, they can do that. If they were, then they would do all sorts of tests going through everything that they're doing. Would they want to destroy the springs? Because let's say, okay, it dried up, we don't have the springs anymore. What are you going to do? Okay, come on to our resort and bungee jump into our nice little pit over here.
Yeah, we're jumping into some sand.
They're not going to do that.
No, they're not. And I'm glad we're talking about this from different aspects of it because the history of it was always supposed to be truly and Chuck, you're probably listening out there and I know that the 2019 plan, but the 2019 plan wasn't why we bought it originally.
No, that was what we did as a commission 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Right.
And we sat through to find out in a park-like state what would be the best type of amenities out there, came up with a plan, and how much would this cost?
Right.
And we kept the Art Deco buildings the same. They wanted to add some areas for some food trucks and maybe a little gathering spots for some musical stuff. And then they took the other part and they just wanted to, okay, let's put in sightseeing towers to see what? I mean, you're going to go up 30 feet. What are you going to see? Treetops and maybe into somebody's backyard over there.
Right.
I mean, they have no purpose.
Birds.
And then, okay, maybe they brought up camping. Okay, well, camping might be okay, but how are you going to secure the springs at night? Are the campers, they're going to jump over the fence and go in and, so it became a monotonous type talk. So, okay, no, we didn't want camping. And then they talked about horses. No, they don't want horse droppings all over the place over there.
Right.
And it was like, okay, we're going to have walking paths, maybe a little museum, maybe a little this, that, or the other, which was nothing that would draw any type of income into that land. It would have been a nice little park thingy.
Well, and
so if you're going to invest all this money, let's say it's 20 million now, let's say the other's 10 million, we'll make it an even 30 million. How are you going to get that 30 million back and explain that to the taxpayers? Oh, but you can come in and walk through our paths for free, or do we accentuate our rates going into the springs to cover everything? You're never going to get that money in return.
And listen, the people that are going to the springs that are outside of our city, you don't have a vote. You don't pay taxes on it.
Mm-hmm.
You're paying for Wormwell Springs through your daily rate or your monthly rate, whatever it is. Listen, to get what you want to do, you'd have to charge everybody $125 a day,
right,
to go in. That goes in. That it isn't part of our city, and there's no one in that group of people that we're just talking about that's going to pay that kind of money to come in.
No,
and nor should they even be expected. But think of it this way: Wormwell Springs at $125 a day is not Disney.
No,
because that's what you pay at Disney.
Right.
So $125 a day to go to Wormwell Springs and look at it at its current state.
Well, it was just like when we were talking about the fees with the aquatic center. One of their options was option 3, and they said, well, we're not promoting this option. And what that did was hiked up the sales to where a family of 4, it probably would have cost them $150 to come in there for the day. And I go, they're not coming to Busch Gardens or Disney.
Right.
So you got to keep it, affordable for the family to want to come.
I think how would you grade? How would you grade what commission is doing right now? Would you give yourselves an A for keeping eyes wide open, or how would you grade the commission on being accepting on points of view from not just all citizens, but all opportunities to try to get that piece of property that, listen, we could talk about it for decades. It has been undercared for. If it wasn't for the city and the great staff that we have at the city, those buildings would have been long gone.
Oh yeah.
If it was privately owned at the state it was being taken care of before. The only reason those buildings are still upright is we kept patching them.
Yep. And then the storm came through and said, you're not patching them anymore.
And so we're talking, the funny thing is we're talking about a group of buildings that shouldn't even be upright.
No. And in the plannings, they just need to be leveled and rebuilt.
Right. The only one that I know that they're talking about trying to keep is the cyclorama.
Yeah, I don't believe there was any damage to it.
Yeah, and
that's a concrete building.
And I agree with trying to save that. And
I agree with it too, because there's the depictions of artists in there, Ponce de Leon, and coming in here, and years ago before they threw everything in there as storage, but you could see all the murals, and there was still sand down there, and the audio system was taken out, but you could walk through and hear how it was explained. It was a great little history lesson.
What would you
and back to grading the commission?
Go ahead. We got 1 minute.
Well, then I'm going to give us a B, and I'll tell you why. We're not working well together on the dais. I think that we have a potential to go ahead and learn and move forward. We've got a lot of different things. We didn't even touch rezoning, but a lot of the answers on the rezoning is they say, well, the roads can't handle this, the roads can't handle that, the infrastructure. That's what the developers are for. If they want to come in and develop, they're going to pay for that, either in impact fees or whatnot, to where all that infrastructure gets put in. And again, what does that do? That saves the taxpayers money.
Yep.
Your millage rate does not go up when they put the infrastructure in. So keep that in mind when you're talking about rezoning and apartment complexes and this, that, and the other. The little Northport of the 70s is now the Northport of the 2020s.
Right.
And I consider us a working commission that is seeing signs that we need to do something now, and we're not afraid to do it. Years ago, a lot of the commissioners just didn't want to do it. And they didn't want to charge the taxpayer to run money out to Sumter when it costs $300,000.
Right.
It's costing $3 million now.
Right.
So if we let it go, it's $9 million in 5 years.
Right.
So
because they ain't gonna slow down.
No. So you get it done now, and you try to spend your money wisely, and you try to keep your millage rate as low as possible for the taxpayer.
And listen, it always flies with you.
I know.
This is John Rawlings with Real Talk Radio 97.5 FM saying thanks. Have a great night. Be safe. And I'll see you on Friday, Pete. Thank you. Commissioner Pete Emrich in the house.
Anytime.
All right. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye now. So I've got real quick rezoning. You hit on that. We've still got listeners online. Yeah. We'll stay here just for a few more minutes. Sure. But
I charge overtime.
I know that. And that's why I'm going to get you out of here, because I'm not flipping that bill. Talk a little bit about the rezoning and why it's important for us.
Well, what we did was we're looking at the ULDC. We're looking at the comp plans. And for many, many years, the ULDC and the comp plan never meshed. And we tasked staff to go ahead and do that. And going through the process, it's like, okay, we're either going to stay a platted community of 275,000 rooftops or whatever the case may be, but we're at a commercial rate of only 8%, and it's not sustainable to have that. If you want 275,000 rooftops, you're going to be paying double what you are in millage rates, right? Because of the services and this, that, and the other, or, cut services, they can be 20 minutes, with police and fire coming to your house.
Well,
but if you want the good service that you have right now, hey, there's a dump up in Venice. Take your garbage to Venice. We don't have to charge you for that. So that's the only way you're going to save money. You want your level of service.
Okay.
So you want to keep that. So you're going to have to pay for that. The more people here, the more manpower, the more it costs. It just goes up. People are not stopping from coming here.
No, they're coming.
They're coming. So we need to rezone some areas to where even Price Boulevard was talked about years ago of being a small downtown. What did Price only had a few houses on it, and then they talked about widening Price, and what happened then? All of the builders came down through there and put up their spec homes.
Yep.
That was their parade of homes for, hey, this is my home, come check it out. So it sort of came in a commercial area like that, but it's still a residential house. And now we're looking at possibly making it mixed use 1, which is small retail. Some areas are going mixed use 2, which could mean duplexes or apartment complexes, which I just met with a developer, and they're talking about certain areas. I'm not going to put out the details. It's going through staff and permitting right now, and it's in an area off of Price, and they're looking at bringing in multiple units. But with the affordable housing, normally it's about 30 years on the books where they keep the rates stable. This developer is willing to do it for 50 years. So affordable housing can go into those areas. It's probably 25% of the apartments going in would be affordable, and then up to market rate. You've got other developers that are just doing market rate with luxury apartments. There's one that has, okay, we'll pick up your garbage from outside your house, outside your door, and take it to our central unit to where, sanitation can come get it. But when you're looking at the apartment complexes and you look at the city services in a whole, it takes less city services to work those areas. You'll have a dumpster area. Sanitation goes in, empties the dumpster.
They're not cutting your manpower. You're doing all that stuff.
They're not going down like Highland Ridge and picking up every single garbage can. The community's doing that. They're making it centrally located. We go in, zip, zip, we're out. It's not costing as much. So that helps us spend a little bit more on the single residentials. So it's got to balance itself out. You can save here to spend here as long as it's basically neutral. So that's what commercial does.
We also know that we need to be at least 18%, really truly 20 on commercial. We're not even in double digits yet.
We're at like 9.
Right. We need to definitely get very focused on driving that. And it's not an easy thing to do in today's world because the commercial side of things is changing. We've got a mall that is literally 10 minutes out south of us that they're going to convert some of that mall space into condos.
Yeah,
they sure are, and it's coming. And so think about that. I mean, people need to really start to wake up and understand that the landscape of our whole entire communities are changing. They're changing in front of our eyes. And the difference is right now, we actually have some people on commission that are going, well, we better change, because if we don't change, we've been saying this for years, it goes south of us. Well, it goes south of us because we're not doing anything to stop it.
Many years ago, and I can't remember when, I think I was just started working with the city, and I was talking to some people, and they had said, well, Sarasota's all overbuilt, and Venice is getting very built out and stuff like that. And then one gentleman said something. He goes, you know what's going to happen, don't you? And he was predicting the future. He says, someday US 41 is going to be the same from Sarasota to Fort Myers, with brick and mortar lining all the way down. Where are we at right now? Northport had a McDonald's, and now look at what we got on 41. So we are building up that way. Welland Park, the same thing. The gaps are getting filled in. Then you get to Murdoch, then you got a space in Punta Gorda. So it's coming.
Let's see. One question: preparing for the lack of water capacity and the rates of the decline with overdevelopment. Well, I think that let's kind of talk about overdevelopment here for a second, and we'll kind of couple these things together, because overdevelopment, if you look at what you just talked about, we're incorporating city water, city sewer in. So those two things we're prepared for that. We are well on our way for being prepared for that style growth.
Sure. And we're also taking water from different areas. We make our own.
Right.
Okay. Does Northport have enough water to take care of its own? Not at all times. And we get it from the Peace River as well.
Right.
There's other different areas that we can take it from as well. We just put in that new water plant up in Welland Park because we were shipping everything up there. Now it's a lot easier. It goes there, it goes out. We can do that in different areas. But here's the deal. When it becomes a need, the developers can cover the cost on that. Because in the areas, if we did water and sewer throughout this whole city, cost us over $1 billion.
Right.
Take us probably 4,000 years to do it.
And that's really state regulated too. State is pushing that.
Right. And if the developers come in and let's say we've got water and sewer and up and down Toledo Blade out to 75, any of those homes in there that don't have it, they can now hook up to it. We're just trying to, when we do hook up to certain areas and go out there, we still have a price gap. They wanted 30,000. We said we're amenable with, I think it was $5,550, which is $5,500 to hook up. Cape Coral did it for 10 grand. My folks back in 80, I think it was, they had it come through in Charlotte County. It was 3 grand.
Right.
And so prices have elevated. I didn't feel that the homeowner needed to pay the price for the main lines going in, which the developer will pay. They would just have to pay for the line coming from the main to their house. Or if they're down the street, they would go from their house to the street, depending on where the lines ended up at.
And we've got our sister community down south in Charlotte County, and they're going through and upgrading from the septic and sewer to public water, or septic and well to public sewer and water. And they've got like I think it's a 10-year bond with each citizen, that it's, or 10-year deal, that it's like an extra $400 a year on their tax bill.
You can do it multiple ways.
Yeah, and here's the thing. My point is, if the city does have to hook up, it's not commissioners who are saying, hey, we got to do water. It's the state pushing some mandates down that says, listen, you guys got to think, you guys
Right.
got to have a plan.
Right. Like I said, there's different ways. You can do it on your taxes. You can do it through your utility bill.
Yeah.
My folks had an option to go ahead and pay an extra $50 a month on their bill or whatever. They just paid for it all up front. They said, we don't want to be billed for it. But the other burden that comes along with that, if somebody's been on a septic and a well, then they're also going to have the charge of having the city water and sewer, which is, I think, minimum $130. So if you're going to charge them $50, you're now at almost a $200 a month bill for somebody that's on a fixed income.
I 100% agree with
you. So that's a concern.
But here's the thing.
Here's the deal. I understand it raises property values. It does this, but it doesn't work on the everyday person that's living it. But they have also put in clauses to where, okay, we may vacate that. You still got to pay your water bill, but we will vacate that. But if your house is sold, you must pay it all at that point. So there's a lot. There's different ways to be able to skin that.
Well, and I'll say something else too, because I sell to water or to septic and well. And here's the thing: you got to pay yourself anyway. That the only payment we should be discussing right now is the hookup payment, because that's part of the maintenance of anybody it's not free water, it's not free septic. You have got to pay for these things. You've got to be able to pump out your septic tank. And I think we're making a huge mistake by not putting some restraint there. And like Charlotte County, Charlotte County has in play right now the health department who tracks everybody's pump out. Every 4 years, you have to pump your house out.
Right.
Well, I think we should mandate that within our city, because we have a lot of old septic tanks that nobody even bothers to pump out, and they don't want to know, because if they pump it out and they get told it's not good, they got to replace it. Well, it's not free anymore once you have to replace it.
And that's another avenue that's very tough when you're doing the water and sewer. You gotta start out in the old areas, in my opinion, rather than the newer areas.
Correct.
Because people may have just built a home, their septic tank's 2 years old, and now you're going to tell them they got to vacate and crush it, and they've already spent $15,000 on whatever they've done to be charged, let's say, another $15,000. To me, that's wrong. And there's got to be ways to work around it. Go to the older areas, start with those. You've got a 20-year-old septic. Hey, you're either going to replace it for $15,000, or you're going to get on city water and sewer for $15,000. You're getting on city water and sewer, and you're actually spending the same amount of money.
Well, we pick on general development all the time. And the fact that we're talking about general development when it's the negative side, I have to tell you that at least when general development built Northport, they put water and sewer in.
Yeah, and I'm in one of those.
I know that. And so it's when you actually sit back and you think about it, they had the fortitude to get this out there and get it going. It's just not as easy as one thinks to keep that trend going. But I agree with you. I think those houses the older houses need to be addressed first. And the newer houses, of course, that are out there, they've got newer equipment. So we're going right back to our conversation, though. If we don't figure out a way to track some of these old septic, where does that go? It goes into our ground. Where's our ground drinking water? Right below our septic tanks. And I know it's going to get filtered by Mother Nature, but if everybody's tank is bad, that's a lot of filtering.
I'm going back to the grading system of the commission. I think that we could do a lot better if the community itself out there helped us more, rather than putting blame on the commission. I know it's never going to change, but I'm just trying to give a hypothesis.
Wish list. Go ahead.
Wish list. Rather than putting blame on the commissioners for making whatever decisions they've made, whether they're for it or against it or whatever the case may be, realize that Northport is growing. We are are, not may, are going to change in a lot of areas around Northport. So their best bet is to, rather than try and assassinate us for our decisions, is, hey, this is my input. This is what I would suggest. This is what I would like. And as a culmination of everybody coming together, not everybody's right out there.
Correct.
Not everybody's right on the dais. So we're all human. So the more feedback we get on this could be good, it's like, damn, you know what? I never thought about that. Not everybody thinks about every single thing.
Correct.
So as a community is coming together rather than trying to tear each other apart, which is nationwide right now. You know, everybody's out there just to slam the next person. You know, there's no respect out there anymore.
Now, so listen, we did the show the other day and we really targeted this, just the common courtesy of decorum when you're at the dais, wherever you're speaking. And it goes both ways. It goes with commission. It goes with the school board. You know, sometimes you get what you sow.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it works both ways when you say that, folks. You can't go into a room and spout off and think they're not listening to you. They're not listening to you because you're talking down at them. You're down in a negative tone, down with everything. And just keep in mind that, and my mom used to say, you get more with sugar than you do with honey, honey than you do with.
Yeah.
I'm losing my mind now. My phone's ringing too. But anyway,
let me ask you this.
Sure, go ahead.
When you're talking about decorum, would you rather have a conversation with somebody, or would you rather be demanded on to do their will?
No, I
how many times would you just look the other way when the demands are coming and saying, you will do this, you have to do this? I had a very good conversation with one of the ladies that was on your show, Robin Sanfazente, and she's got the passion on Warm Mill Springs.
Sure.
And I had the conversation with her saying, listen, nothing is written in stone. We're getting to the point, just like we explained on the show today. And she sat back. She said, well, that's good to know. I says, you know, don't lose your passion about it. I'll always have a conversation with you. I said, there's others in your little group out there that I won't even talk to, nor will talk to me. So those conversations will never happen. But I appreciate your input. I appreciate, you know, she represents a lot of people over there. She brings her voice to the commission.
She did a great job on the show.
But she also brings it in, and I'm you know, she gets disappointed and there's ire and anger, but she doesn't what do you mean? You know, throw it at you. She just sits there and tries to explain it to you in the best way possible. That's easy listening.
Let's see.
Chuck can't sleep, huh?
No, Chuck can't sleep, and I can't read because I didn't put my contacts on.
Do you know, since Ian, our canals and waterway are significant impaired according to FEMA? That I don't have any information on.
I know, Chuck. I know that we're checking on that, buddy. And I did ask that question, and unfortunately, they did not want to talk about it yet. I think they're still trying to work on some things. You know, I did ask if we could get some sort of a depth, and I know this is going to play right into your hand, my friend, on the contamination in the canal. But I'm not even talking about that. I know that you would be, and true statement. It should be. But I don't know that our canals are at the depth that they were when they were built. I'm sure they're not. So we're not even talking about capacity in our canals that we should be at. I'm quite positive they probably need to be dredged at some point.
Yeah, we talked about that not too long ago about the dredging, and we do have a dredging plan that's coming up to go ahead and do that. If I remember correctly, it's got to be at least 20 years since the last dredging, especially of the Cocoa Plum, that one up there, because I remember when they dredged it and they put the debris piles all up on the roadways back in there. Snover, I couldn't tell you how long, probably about the same time span. They probably went around and did a loop. So yeah, there's silt buildup. There's wash-ins from properties. Absolutely, it needs dredging again.
100%.
I would say we probably have a fairly decent amount of fill in there from over the 20 years.
Yep. Well, listen, we've got to do this again.
Shit, my ass is buzzing.
Watch out. So
spam.
Yeah, there you go. We love it. Well, we stayed on 20 minutes extra, folks, and I want to thank you, Pete, for doing that. We'll get back with you guys soon. If you have any questions, 941-391-4663. You can text or call me. If we need to do another show and you want to get some people involved, everybody knows I've got access to cameras and I can get you out there and I can have up to 10 people on the screen at the same time asking questions. So feel free to give me a call direct and I'll set any topic up and set it in motion. And if you want Pete back on, let me know.
Absolutely.
Talk to you, buddy.
I can't remember when I'm up next, maybe November.
Yeah, it might be, but we can always make room.
We can make room.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good night and be safe out there. We'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye now.